guys, my name is Serena Poon, and welcome to my show, Serena Loves. As a celebrity chef, nutritionist, and entrepreneur, I'm incredibly passionate about helping others live their best life through methods I call culinary alchemy, which is the magical combination of education, integrative and functional nutrition, and healing intuitive energy. So, with each episode, I'm going to share with you the inspiring stories of some amazing people, incredible entrepreneurs from all different backgrounds, each who have overcome challenges in their personal journeys to get to where they are today. And today, I'm so honored to welcome to the show an incredible human being who I admire so much. As an international keynote speaker, a social impact entrepreneur, and the national director for the Global Poverty Project, he co-created the Global Citizen Festival, which is this really cool movement and musical festival that is dedicated to ending poverty everywhere. So through this festival, he brought in incredible legendary artists like Jay-Z, Beyonce, Stevie Wonder, so many others, and this festival has raised billions of dollars for programs serving the world's poorest people. But he didn't stop there. Inspired by his father's health challenges, he went on to create Peak Mind, which is a social platform and top-rated podcast, which is here to serve, support, and inspire people to live to their highest potential. And through Peak Mind, he's brought some of our most notable, influential thought leaders for this time. He has the Dalai Lama, Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle. I mean, yeah, right? So he's brought these people on to inspire the community for a new vision of leadership, consciousness, and peak performance through mindful living. And he's also a Fulbright scholar. So basically, he's just an all-around genius and an awesome person, and we are so lucky to have him on the show today. Please welcome the brilliant Michael Trainer.
Thank you, Serena.
You're so welcome.
That's quite an introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, I mean, it's you, and that's only just a small part of you. You've done so many incredible things, and you've already had such an impact on our world with everything that you're doing, and you're doing even more. So it's been so inspiring for me to just read and listen and hear all about what you've done. And I would love for you to share kind of how it all started and what led you to do Global Citizen and then also Peak Mind.
For me, I would say in the context of the genesis of both, from my point of view, it started with my experience in Sri Lanka. So I had you mentioned at the end there, the very beautiful opportunity to live in Sri Lanka on a Fulbright scholarship with a traditional healer. And in Sri Lanka, there's no word for privacy. Traditionally, there's no word for privacy, and there's no word for possession. So literally, you exist in relationship to your community, to the whole, right? So in our world, we oftentimes look at dis-ease based on sort of, you have a broken arm, or you have, unfortunately, cancer, or some type of a infectious disease. In the context of traditional psychosocial dynamics in Sri Lanka, it was really about if one person felt out of balance, if they felt lonely, if they felt not connected to the whole, it was seen that it was the role of the entire community to bring them back into the whole. And I think in our day and age now, that actually proves more salient than ever, because I think there's this epidemic of loneliness.
Yes.
And so much of the disease, quote unquote, that we see now is a result of that feeling of profound loneliness. And so for me, the genesis of thinking about how do we build movements as it relates to ending extreme poverty, I mean, with Global Citizen, it was really a conversation around, there was this traditional notion of, helping the poor, quote unquote. And it felt very much like, give up your cup of coffee and we'll show you this, what I call like poverty porn, Sally Struthers, we'll show you this picture of this child in Africa and ask you to give up your cup of coffee. And that may, through guilt, encourage you to take action, but doesn't really build a sense of shared humanity.
Right.
So really with Global Citizen, it was how do we build a movement around our shared humanity, but to do so through hope and inspiration. And so for me, informed by my experience in Sri Lanka and studying ritual and looking at music and drumming and dancing and how it was used to bring people back into balance, back into a sense of community and into a sense of our shared humanity, something larger than ourselves, that really informed the sort of architecture of what if we threw a music events and instead of basically asking for people's money, let's ask them for their action. Let's ask them for the, to get to enroll them in their hearts and minds and to, through their action, reward them with tickets to this once in a lifetime opportunity, right? This festival. And so they can go see their favorite artists. You mentioned some of the artists, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Neil Young, Black Keys, Foo Fighters, a variety of the world's best musicians who then brought in their audience. And through that, we were able to convert much of their audience into activists, ambassadors, if you will, and then through that grow a larger movement, which then with the heads of state and various heads of NGOs has been able to raise, fortunately, multi-billions of dollars to serve programs around ending extreme poverty, which we believe can happen in our lifetime. So that for me was a huge impetus for Peak Mind, which came really, as you mentioned, upon my father's diagnosis, and where we had with Global Citizen to focusing on, diseases that would largely affect the developing world, like polio and malaria. I saw in the U.S., dementia was now being called type 3 diabetes, and there was this global epidemic on the way as it related to inflammatory disease, a lot of which is based on our diet and lifestyle, which you're, I'm sure, super familiar with, and so I really looked at how do we build another movement to encourage people to have a lifestyle shift. And for me, that started in my own practice with meditation and mindfulness. And so I decided to launch Peak Mind with His Holiness the Dalai Lama on the occasion of his 80th birthday and really build a broader based momentum around meditation. And that subsequently led to other events with, as you mentioned, Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle, and now looking to actually create a large-scale event, sort of bridging, if you will, my experience with Global Citizen as well as Peak Mind, called Legacy, where I want to bring the sort of inner world of wellness within and reward people to take action on behalf of our planet, especially as it relates to climate. And so I want to do a large-scale reforestation, planting and protecting of our trees in the Amazon by incentivizing people to take their health to the next level and build and take action through their community. So really incentivize people with their friends where they can do really cool experiences, and in doing those really cool experiences, they'll actually plant or protect hopefully millions of trees.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I want to hear a little bit more about that because that's something I'm not as familiar with. I didn't see it.
I had just literally talked about it for the first time 2 days ago on the podcast.
Wow.
So it's brand new.
Okay.
But the vision came to me, and I was like, you're obviously an expert in the wellness space, and I'm deeply passionate about it and have gone very, very deep down the rabbit hole. But I realized you can drink all the green juice in the world, but if you can't breathe the air, what are we to do?
100%.
And right now, I think we're moving into an era where it's ostensibly we're going to see sort of climate apartheid. And for me, from a justice point of view, as well as wanting people to live happy, healthy lives, I feel like I want to start taking some of the experiences I learned in launching and building Global Citizen early years and apply that through the context of what I've learned through Peak Mind. Because it's my belief that ultimately the world is a manifestation of our collective internal states.
Yes.
So, it's a bit of a crass analogy, but say take a lottery winner or a pro athlete, 80-90% of those folks wind up going to, they have this huge windfall of wealth, but then they go back to either their default income or actually go bankrupt.
Yeah.
And so I think while we're looking to change the world, it's important to change the world within.
Yes.
Because ultimately the two rise together.
Absolutely. And I love that you're talking about this because it's clearly such a huge pillar of my belief system as I work not just on myself, but on clients and other people, because I'm also a Reiki master. So that inner self, that inner voice, and working on that's your spiritual energy, your soul, all of that it's just as important as when we talk about wellness and food and nutrition. I mean, it's equally important. And the wellness and the health of our environment is now become this fourth pillar that's just as important, right? Because you talk
100%.
about the air, and that is, So that's incredible.
Well, I think the thing is not to go too philosophical, but I think for many, many, generations, the earth and the environment was seen as interdependent, interconnected. So just as we spoke in Sri Lanka, where we are interconnected and interdependent as humans in our shared humanity, it's my belief and that we are also deeply connected to the environment, right?
We
We
are.
are interdependent upon the environment. So for me, I'm really interested in, I think we've exalted the idea of independence for quite a long time, but what does the idea of exalting interdependence look like? And knowing that we are inextricably linked to our environment. So I'm not ready to announce it yet, but I'm looking at ways in which actually I can in a very cool gamified ways, connect that which you care about the most to the environment. So that's the vision, and actually create rewards and incentives for you to both through your self-interest as well as your altruistic interest, make a difference.
Wow. This sounds awesome. No, it really does. I'm just like, okay, so after we wrap, I'm going to be asking a lot more about this.
Yeah.
How I can help support, and obviously how our audience and, the community can help support when you get to that point.
Yeah, it's almost ready, and the beauty is I'll be sharing updates through the podcast, but it's exciting, and it's actually coming up really soon because my intention is to launch on Earth Day next year, which is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So April 22nd, 2020 will be the big day.
Yeah, wow. So tell me a little bit about how you started, because these are massive movements and platforms that you've created, but everyone kind of starts somewhere with some sort of history. I'd love for you to share that, because I feel that that's very inspiring, for people who are in transitions in their life and wanting to know how they can do more and give more, and how you kind of took a vision and you turned it into a reality. So it's always great to kind of know where people's backgrounds came from.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think there's a variety of different things I could touch upon, but I think in service to the audience, for me, it has been amazing to be able to, with incredible teams, create these profound platforms. But, I think as with anyone, ultimately, a lot of that started for me from challenges, and I think, we either see our challenges, our traumas, whatever you want to call them, as weights that hold us down, or they become catalysts for different opportunities, right? If you will, almost like compost in the garden, And
That's a good way of putting it, actually.
Yeah, it kind of is, right? It's like, do you take the unfortunate aspects of life and let them be your narrative, your identity, or do you actually use that and transmute it in a way like compost, where crap becomes fuel for the flourishing of future gardens? And so for me, a lot of this, actually what led me to Sri Lanka in the first place was, I had pretty traumatic experiences, a variety of them, one of which was being jumped, my first experience alone and away from home. So I actually started to ritualize my behavior.
Wow.
And that was called neuroses, and I was told to go on medication and this and that. And while it was an uncomfortable phase in life, what I looked at was, well, how would other cultures, appreciate this? And for me, what I realized was I was ritualizing my behavior and doing things that were considered neurotic, like checking the door a lot of times, washing my hands lots of times, called basically OCD, obsessive compulsive behavior. And I was like, okay, well, that one solution would be to go on medication. The other, which they advocate, is called exposure therapy. So you go as deep into your fear as possible. So for me, I looked at it and I was like, well, since time of millennia, people have been ritualizing behavior to assuage anxiety. They just had a community and a religious traffic in which that made sense. I just didn't have that. So I was creating ritual, to assuage my sense of anxiety because I had had this traumatic experience. But what I said was, you know what, instead of letting that be debilitating, let me go as deep into my fear as possible. So I associated leaving the nest with challenge, because I'd been kind of violently assaulted. But instead, what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to go as far away from my reality as possible, because that's my fear. So I went to Sri Lanka, which is literally longitudinally on the opposite side of the world, into a country amidst civil war. And I basically was like, all right, I'm going to face my fear as full on and directly as possible.
Wow.
And that actually, not ironically, I think, wound up being the gestation for much of the shift that took place in my life in terms of the ideation that I shared earlier. So for me, and then also by the way, found a culture in which ritual had a deep place, right?
Right.
And found a culture in which ritual was used to bring about that sense of well-being amidst community, and where, in our culture, which is very individual-centered, someone that is a schizophrenic may, in the right cultural tradition, have been actually an ideal shaman.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think in our current Western society, a lot of people who are, exalt this idea of shamanism as some romantic thing, and I think it's actually traditionally the sort of the keeper of the place between two worlds, and a servant really to the community and to people being able to move effectively through. And it's not, I think, an exotic thing at all. It was actually an act of profound service.
Yeah.
But we don't have, in our Western culture at least, these intermediaries, and so. What was fascinating was in a place like Sri Lanka, just being introduced to just totally different cultures,
Yeah.
totally different ways of being, and ones in which, things that were considered, perhaps illnesses or what have you in the West, where there was a traditional context that was not perceived as actually something to be afraid of, but actually something to be embraced, just in the context of a greater community, a greater religiosity, if you will, a way in which that made sense. So for me, I know not everyone who's listening has necessarily been to Sri Lanka, but I think what that distills down is just, I think, oftentimes what is of greatest service in our life that becomes our greatest gift comes first from our greatest challenge.
Yeah, no, and I would agree with you on that. And it's interesting because in the recent months, I've really kind of been diving into trauma and trauma work, and understanding how it could be something that's as severe as getting, violently jumped and attacked, but it could be something that happens even in your childhood, where, your mom or your dad turned your back on you in a pivotal moment when you were young, and it changes sort of the direction of where your mind goes. And so I love that you took something that was highly traumatic, violent even, and then you went this direction into it. And I feel that really inspires people to kind of take a step back and look at how they're responding to what's happening in their life, and knowing that there's different directions that they can go, and sometimes embracing that and really diving into it is really where your answer is, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, not to make light of any traumatic experiences that anyone that is listening may have had, because I have deep empathy for those experiences. And what I'll also say is, what I've realized the hard way in my own life is that ultimately you can either be victim to it, or you can assume responsibility.
Sure.
And that's not to say anything that has happened, say you deserve for that to have happened, or that it was right that it happened,
Right.
or just. But it is to say that how you deal with it
Exactly.
is 100% your responsibility. And in taking that responsibility, you take the power back. Right?
Exactly.
And so, to me, the empowerment proceeds from the context of that taking responsibility. And from that place, actually, there's so many more places to go.
Yes,
It's just like,
exactly.
it opens up a whole context. And really, I think that's the tenet for true leadership, right?
Yes.
Take, for example, I just rewatched the film Invictus, which is so wonderful. But take someone like Nelson Mandela, right? A figure I have profound reverence for. Man was in prison for 27 years. Couldn't even bury his own son. When he passed away, I can't imagine the resentment that could build. Yet, instead of being resentful, he was like, that's in the past. I'm going to choose to use that as fuel. And through his forgiveness, obviously, was able to gestate a context in which a whole nation could find its footing.
Right.
And I think that's profound. I look to those kinds of figures as inspiration, and say, okay, how can I be some fraction of what they have been able to gestate? Like, if I get into a sense of being like, oh, I'm a victim, like, think about, okay, who are those figures? There's another gentleman I met by the name of Wilfred Massena. I volunteered in a hospital after the Haitian earthquake. This young man had been a welder, and he lost his leg. Long story short, he spent a week trying to get his leg reattached. Of course, at that point, it's gangrenous, and he couldn't. And I was with him when he got a prosthesis, right? So for many people, that was an extremely confronting thing to say,
Right.
oh, I'm going to have a piece of plastic as my leg.
Right.
For him, it was like great joy. It was like,
Wow.
was like, this is a new opportunity. I can walk again, because he
Wow,
had been,
yeah.
and within half an hour, he was breakdancing and kicking a soccer ball.
Wow.
And I actually awarded him the Global Citizen Movement Award on stage at the first Global Citizen Festival. What was so powerful was he then said, okay, I'm going to turn my welding skills into teaching, into learning how to make prosthesis for kids. So he made prosthetic legs for kids that had lost limbs, and then he started a soccer league for amputees.
Wow.
So he basically was like, okay, I'm going to turn this into my fuel, right? And then he started a soccer league for men, then for women, then for children. Then he came to the U.S. and trained servicemen returning from Iraq and Afghanistan in how to play soccer.
Wow.
So anyway, it's just to say, like, profound challenge could have been like debilitating, but instead he chose to see that as a huge opportunity, and I think that's really beautiful.
That is beautiful, and I love it. It's so inspiring, and I'm sure that you probably have a lot more stories like that on your podcast, right?
Yes.
So I would love for you to share with the community where they can find more stories like that, because it's profound, it's beautiful.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm about to launch one I'm extremely excited about, but the podcast is called Peak Mind. The website is peakmind.org. I'm at Michael Trainer across all social platforms, but Peak Mind, we've had everyone from His Holiness the Dalai Lama to Deepak Chopra to, I've got an incredible episode coming up around manhood and embodied masculinity, but anyone, Maria Sharapova to Laird Hamilton, Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Terry Walls in terms of health and wellness. So it's really kind of a confluence of amazing thinkers. So I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review if it resonates. But really just working to build a community of inspiration, and so grateful to be on the show. Thank you so much.
So grateful to have you. That was so great. Could talk to you for hours, and I actually can't wait to dive into all your podcasts and catch up on every single one, because you just have great storytelling and great guests. So thank you for doing that.
Thanks,
for
Serena.
creating that. So thank you so much. Thank you guys for joining us today. We will see you guys next time.